Bava Basra Daf Pei Vov Amud Aleph, the power in your hand. Ein niknin elo b'mashicha. When I got to yeshiva after school, and I'd already learned. I'd learned with my father all my life. I'd learned in South Africa, in school, in yeshiva high school. I'd spent over a year in yeshivas in Israel during school. And yet when I got to yeshiva, I became overwhelmed with my ignorance. And the overwhelm was serious. It led to a sense of depression. And I went to my Rosh Yeshiva. It was one of the most important conversations that I had, and one of the most transformative. And I said to him, I can't make it here. I can't manage. Firstly, there's the language. We'll get over that. But everything I say to my chavrusas, they bring me 10 reasons from all over Shas why I'm talking nonsense, why I'm wrong. And I don't know these Gemaras. I can't even argue with it at the end of the conversation. So I just keep quiet. So what's the point? I just can't function. So he said, whenever they quote stuff at you, insist that they bring you the sources and learn the sources with them. If you drill down, you'll notice their knowledge is so superficial, they actually don't understand what they're talking about. And little by little, you'll establish yourself and you'll be able to deal with them. And I understood then that there are two ways of learning. There are many ways of learning, obviously, but in this respect, there are two ways of learning. The brother of the Vilna Gaon in his Sefer Malas HaTorah talks about the fact that Eitz Chaimi, the Torah, is referred to as a tree because a tree can be understood by taking a step back and looking at the whole tree. And a tree can be understood by taking a seed of the tree and studying it under a microscope. You can take a seed, and if you study it under a microscope, you'll understand everything you need to know about the tree. So the Torah, you can take a step back, and you can see the whole Torah, or you can analyze a seed. And I realized that Rebbeinu Shalom has given different people different koichos. Some people have the memory and the mastery and the speed of thinking to be able to know the whole of Shas and master it all. And some people don't have that talent. So that's just an indication that your method of learning has to be focusing on the seed. Shimon Peres said when he was old, that he said, when I was a child, I used to think the most incredible instrument in the world was the telescope, because look what we've been able to see through the telescope. And when I got older, I realized the most amazing instrument in the world is the microscope, because we've learned much more about how the universe works from the microscope than we have from the telescope. And one can learn the Gemara telescopically, and one can learn the Gemara microscopically. And since that conversation with my Rosh Yeshiva, I've been learning microscopically, as you can see, focusing in and trying to get to the seed of an idea, to the essence. And from there, it can expand, and you can understand everything if you understand the seed properly. And today is such an example. We'll share it today, a chidush, an understanding, an insight in the laws of kinyanim, which I think is mind-shattering. I think anybody who has explored the world of kinyanim will understand the ramifications of what we'll learn this morning. But it comes from analyzing a Rashbam on our daf. Just one little Rashbam. And I say one little Rashbam. Who is the Rashbam? The Rashbam is not just Rashi's grandson. That's not his only claim to fame. Think of it. The Rashbam is a talmid of Rashi and his grandson, and the Rebbe of Rabbeinu Tam and Ri. Rabbeinu Tam and Ri are the foundations. Rabbeinu Tam towers over the whole medieval period as a rabbinic authority. There's nobody like Rabbeinu Tam. And Rabbeinu Tam and Ri create the whole Tosfos methodology, which is the foundation of all of our learning and our psak halacha of today. The Rashbam is the Talmud of Rashi and the Rebbe of Rabbeinu Tam and Ri. So the Rashbam is the link between Rashi and the whole school of Tosfos. The Rashbam is a key link in the whole chain of tradition. And we get to Rashi. Rashi's Torah comes from Rabbeinu Gershom, he's Rabbeim's Rebbe, and Rabbeinu Gershom from the Goinim, and the Goinim from the Gemara. It's that whole chain. The Rashbam is the key to our chain of tradition of understanding the Gemara. And we don't have a lot of the Rashbam. We have the Rashbam through Tosfos and quotations of him, but fortunately in Bava Basra, because we don't have Rashi, they published the Rashbam on the side in the place where Rashi is. And the Rashbam has been our Rebbe in Bava Basra. And this round of learning Bava Basra, I felt such an intimacy with the Rashbam, like I'm sitting in his class, sitting in his shul, and he's teaching us, not just teaching us the Gemara, but teaching us how to learn the Gemara. And by focusing in on the Rashbam, we discover this idea of kinyonim. Now, there are two sets of kinyonim. There are the kinyonim that apply to immovable property, and we did a very deep Matmonim back in Kiddushin Daf Vav, which it's worth reviewing, on the whole foundation of kinyonim when it comes to immovable property. And some of you might remember that we talked about then also the Maimer of Shmuel and Masechta Brochus about how does it work that the Haaretz LaHashem, that the world belongs to Hashem, and yet V'haaretz nasan livnei Adam, we've got we have the rights to use it, kan kodim brocha, kan lacha brocha, that the brocha is what gives us the rights to use the world. And we discussed what kind of kinyan is that? Where do you find a kinyan brocha? It belongs to Hashem, and if you say a brocha, you can use it. And if you don't say a brocha, it's stealing. That means the brocha is the kinyan. What kind of a brocha is a kinyan? We explained in that shir why the brocha is in fact a kinyan and how it affects transfer of ownership from Hashem to mankind, to humankind of the Bria itself. And that's a very important shir. On the website, on matmonim.org, it's very easy to find the shir, to find any shir. It'll take 2 seconds. It's all archived properly. You'll find the shir, you'll find the source sheet. It's very easy to navigate and to find. But today we learn about movable property. We start with the pasuk in Bahar, v'chitim karu mem kala amitecha kano miyad amitecha al tonu ish et achiv. We've learned this pasuk before in Bava Metzia. If you sell something to your friend, or you buy something miyad amitecha, from the hand of your friend. Why does it say from the hand of your friend? Why doesn't it just say from your friend? Says the Gemara. What do we learn from that? We learn that she'ein lahem achrayat, that nechasim, property that is not fixed property, that is not land, but is the golden Rolex, the movable property, ein niknin ela b'meshicha, they can only be acquired with meshicha. The method of acquisition is to draw them towards you, to pull them forwards. Minalan, where do we get it from? This verse, tichtiv v'chitim kuru mem kala mitecha kanom yad amitecha davar hanikneh miyad liyad. So meshicha is the primary kinyan. Drawing something towards you is the primary kinyan for metaltalin. What does our Gemara say? Our Gemara quotes the Mishnah in Kiddushin Daf Vav, the daf that I referred you to for the Matmonim. Land is acquired through money, documentation, or possession. Movable property. Then the Gemara says the various different sources are accredited for the following statement. What is the statement? Lo shanu el advarim she'en darkan lahagbia. This that the Mishnah says in Kiddushin, that movable property can only be acquired through Mashiach, only applies with things that are not fit to lift up. They're too heavy. Then you've got to schlep them, you've got to drag them. But if it's a golden Rolex, you can't do Mashiach on a golden Rolex. The way you do a kinyan on a golden Rolex is you lift it up. That's kinyan agbo. Where do we see that from? Where does the Gemara get that from? That we've just learned that you learn Mashiach from a pasuk in the Torah. Where do you learn Hagbah? Where do you learn this kinyan of lifting things up from? Says the Ritvo in Kiddushin, a very classical Ritvo in Kiddushin, in the Kinyonim, Ela vadai meshicha ikar kra umina itrabu mesira v'hagbah. The pasuk's primary lesson is that the method of acquiring movable property is meshicha, is drawing it to you. And hagbah, lifting up, is deduced from that, and it's like a tolda. It's like the same as in Shabbos, we've got Ovis and Toldas. We've got the main melachot, and then we've got the melachot that are similar to it, that we learn from it. Arba Ovis Nezikin, we have an Av, we have the parent principle, and then you've got Tolda, the ones that are generated from the parent. And Rabbi Weiss, among others, Rabbi Weiss has a beautiful piece in Siman Membez on Bava Batra on the principles of kinyonim. He goes through all the different principles of kinyonim very, very beautifully. And he uses this ritva to introduce the idea that there's this idea of ovos and toldos in kinyonim. There are primary kinyonim and toldos of kinyonim. And with enormous respect to him, it's very difficult to understand. Where do we have such a thing as ovos? Ovos Nezikin we've got. Ovos in Ilchos Shabbos we've got. Where do you have Arba Ovos Kinyonim? And these are the Torah. Where do you have such a thing? A Ritvo? Did the Ritvo invent this? Where did the Ritvo get it from? And that's where the Rashbam comes in. Look at the Rashbam. Says the Rashbam, b'meshicha shemoshchan lirshuto or lirshut sheyesh lo chelek bo kegon simta v'chatzer hashutfin. That you drag the object into an area, a domain in which you have control. It's your property, or it's a Rishus Harabim, or it's a place where you're allowed to be. The kol shchein b'hagbah. Look at those words. And what about hagbah? Where do I know from that hagbah works? It's a kol shchein, it's a kal v'chomer. So tolda doesn't mean when the Ritvo, and I'm learning the Rashbam as the foundation of the Ritvo's comment. The Ritvo says it's a tolda. It doesn't mean like ovis meloches and told us, and like ovis nezikin and told us. That's not what he means. He means tolda. Literally, it emerges from, it is learned from, it is generated from. How? What is the method of generation? Kol shchein. You get it from a kal v'chomer. The hagbaha koneh b'chol makom b'chol davar. Because Hagbah always works. Hagbah is universal. To Mishi Higbia, Hinicha Birshuto Afilu Belo Meshicha. Because if you lift something up, you have put it in your possession, you've put it in your domain, even without dragging it. Dragging it is a chidush. Hagbah is clearly you can do. The chidush of the posuk is you're even allowed to do Meshicha. And if you can do Meshicha, then certainly you can do Hagbah. And again, Rabbi Weiss and others want to say, you see from this approach, that the concept of Hagbah and Meshicha, which are obviously connected, is you putting it into your reshut. It's like a kinyan chatzer. Kinyan chatzer is if you put something in the golden Rolex you bring and you deliver to my house, as we discussed yesterday, then my house is koine. The fact that it's in my house means I'm koine. And the fact that it's in my hand is henicha birshuto. It's as if this is my chatzer, this is my yard, and this is therefore it's mine. Again, I'm going to suggest that's not what the Rashbam is saying. That henicha birshuto means it's in my domain. And we're going to base it on the principle we used in Bava Metzia, and we've used since, and we used yesterday, that Rishus has two meanings. Rishus means my domain, my area, my property, and Rishus means my control. I have to give you permission to access. You are denied access. Rishus means I have access to it and nobody else does. I have to give you reshut, I have to give you permission to be able to get that. If the golden Rolex is in your store, in your house, you can take it whenever you want. You can do what you want for it. Even if it's in Rishus Harabim, you can pick it up the same as anybody else can pick it up. But if it's in my house, you can't touch it without my permission. That's what Rishus means. A Rishus HaYochid means an individual has the rights of access. A Rishus HaRabim means the public has the rights of access. Rishus means rights of access. And the Shari Yosha, we quoted and built the shir on Daf Chovav in Kiddushin on Reb Shimon Shkop's definition of kinyonim. The Gidrei HaKinyanim, the principle, the foundation of kinyanim, is lachlif or lechadesh koach hashlita shel ha'adam ala chayfetz, is to establish or renew an individual's control over an object, an individual's rights of access to an object. That's what kinyonim are for. And that's what Rishus means in the Rashbam. So if we understand kinyonim the way that we've learned with Reb Shimon Shkop, and we learn the Rashbam carefully, what the Rashbam is saying is the very foundation of kinyonim is control. What is the instrument of control? The instrument of control is the yad. You use your hand to control. You control things with your hand, you control people with your hand, you control your pen with your hand, you control your car with your hand. Without hands, you can't control anything. That's why it's a terrible thing. If a person loses their limbs, we're seeing this happening at the moment, unfortunately with so many people losing limbs, they lose the ability to control anything. Can't control what I eat. I can't wash myself. What can I do without hands? The yad is the instrument of control. The yad is the foundation of control. And therefore, says the Rashbam, we learn from Okano miyad amitecha that even Meshicha is an establishment of control. Even drawing something to you is an establishment of control. But picking it up is certainly establishment of control. Let's have a look on the next page of the source sheets of the whole essence of Kinyan Chatzer and so on. So we learn there are two psukim from which we learn the laws of kinyan chatzer, of a domain being able to cause a kinyan. One is im himatzei timatzei hagneva. If the lost article is found in somebody's hands, im timatzei beyado. And in Parshas Kitesi with Gittin, we've had these psukim before. V'natan biyada, you've got to put the get in her hand. From there we learn in a brayso biyado, ein li'en layado. Does that only mean hand? What about in the yard? Talmud lomar himatzei timatzei mikol makom. Himatzei timatzei expands the understanding of yad to include chatzer. Expands the understanding of yad to include my yard, my property. So if something is found in my yard, it doesn't have to be found in my hand. If it's found in my closet, or if it's found in my yard, I'm already accused of being the ganav in that case. Or in the case of gittin, if one gives the get into a woman's property, into a woman's domain, that's as if you've put it into her hand. Once again, we see the source is the hand. Chatzer is an expansion of yad. That's the important thing to understand. It's not that chatzer mishum yad, that chatzer is learnt from as an expansion of yad, but the essence is yad. Because yad is shlita, and as Rabbi Shimon Shkop says, kinyonim is about shlita. So kinyonim is about control, and the vehicle of control is the hand. And therefore, that hagba'ah works, that goes without saying. Once you know that meshicha works, once you know that you can withdraw it, that's the chiddush, that not only does hagba'ah work, but meshicha works as well, because hagba'ah is the clearest demonstration of control. What would happen if I walk into a store and there's a golden Rolex on the table and I pick it up? What's the owner of the store likely to say? Excuse me, where are you going with that? Immediately he'll say that, because clearly my intention, I've picked it up to do something with it. If I just move it, he'll keep an eye on me, but he's not going to say anything. You just moved it. So is Meshicha also going to work? Says the Torah, yes, even Meshicha works. But you don't have to tell me Hagba'ah, says the Rashbam. So the Rashbam is not only not chilek with the Ritvo, the Rashbam is the foundation of the Ritvo. When the Ritvo says that Hagbo Havele Ketolda Dida, that Hagba'ah is a tolda of Meshicha. What he means is, yes, the Torah tells us Meshicha, but from Meshicha, using a kol shchein, we're able to deduce that Hagba'ah is even more so. And that explains in our Gemara why the Gemara says about Dvarim shedarkan lagbia b'Hagba'ah in b'Meshicha lo. Our Gemara says if something can be lifted up, then the kinyan is Hagba'ah, not Meshicha. According to the Ritvo, if the whole essence is Meshicha, drawing, then you shouldn't be able to do Hagba'ah. Why should you be able to do Hagba'ah if you're able to do Meshicha? Meshicha is the foundation. No, says what the Ritvo means, as the Rashbam explains, is not that Meshicha is the foundation. Meshicha is where we learn it from. But conceptually, the foundation is Hagba'ah. So if something can be lifted up, you use Hagba'ah, you don't use Meshicha, even though the Posuk teaches us Meshicha. But from the Posuk we learn that Hagba'ah is much more fundamental to that, because the hands are the instruments of control. Have you ever wondered why it is? If you look on the internet, you'll find many pieces of advice as to what the first practices of your morning should be. A whole lot of different things people should do first thing: exercise, meditation, journey. Everybody's got different. What does a Jew do first thing in the morning? Wash our hands. That's so uninspiring. Of all the things, go through all the things people say that you should do in the morning. They're all very inspiring. Nobody says, first thing you do in the morning, say modani and wash your hands. Why is washing their hands so important? Because we learn that yadayim askani yotein. When you're asleep, you have no control over your hands. That's terrible. Because my hands are my instruments of control. My hands are my humanity. Without my hands, I can't craft. Without my hands, I can't write. Without my hands, I can't create. Without my hands, I can't do anything. I can't eat. I can do nothing without my hands. And for the whole night, I had no control over my instruments of control. First thing in the morning is regain control over your hands. Rededicate your hands to their purpose. Wash your hands in the same way that we wash when we go into the Beis HaMikdash. Dedicate your hands before you even get to your mind or your heart or anything else. You're going to start, the first thing you're going to start doing is touching things, moving things. You're going to take control of your environment. You lost control of your environment while you were asleep. And that's why sleep is like a form of death. You had no control. Now you're gaining control. Washing your hands is the re-establishment of your control over your environment, of your ability to master in your environment, and your responsibility to dedicate that mastery to the service of Hashem.